everybody, it's Evan back, and today I'm going to be making another addition to the Antweight BattleBot Engineer with Me playlist. So if you left off last episode, you'd remember that we just finished creating this two-part subassembly for the tires. So just to take a quick review of those, this is going to be a two-component subassembly. The first one is this inner sort of hub that has a pulley adapter. I'm going to print this from PLA, and this outside tire is going to be cast from silicone. So later on I'll have to make those molds, but that'll probably be another video. For now, I want to finish the drive system. So the last component that I really need to make is going to be the central adapter that transfers the torque from this shaft to these two pulleys. So it's going to have to be a kind of a two pulley or two groove component that attaches to the shaft with a little bit of interference fit. And then I'm also going to find a way to also fix it, allow it to rotate but be fixed to this outside frame, just so that the tension from those belts isn't putting any unwanted shear force onto this shaft. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I think what I'm going to do is, rather than making a whole new component, I'm going to copy over one of these hubs and then just sort of slice this part out because it already has that pattern that we need, and then mirror it across this face and then work from there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Okay, so you can see I have that component kind of coming along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to joint it to this shaft, just so we get the positioning right. I'm going to make sure that these pulleys kind of look aligned, and then I'm going to create this D-shaped hole through this part. So I'm kind of just thinking through how I want this to fit. Especially when using 3D printed materials, it's really hard to predict how these things are going to fit. It could change just based off the material you're using, how much infill you have, wall thickness, etc. Because what happens is when you have those 3D prints, that hot plastic expands, right? It gets printed out into the desired shape, and then it actually shrinks as it cools down, right? So what I want to do is make this a little bit bigger than I think it needs to be, right? I said I want to have an interference fit. I'm going to offset this and make it probably about 0.5 millimeter. It's really hard to say, but the cool thing about FD and 3D printing is that it's pretty quick, especially with a component this small. I can afford to come back and do this again if the component doesn't fit well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I actually made a mistake. I think it's going to be really important to not have this hole all the way through. That way those pulleys are properly aligned. So we need to have a stopping face. So I'm going to extrude this. And I'm going to have to make this thing transparent real quick. But I'm going to have to extrude it straight to the shaft. I'm going to turn this back on. Should be join. There we go. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mount this rotating component to this frame, which I actually disabled the visibility on. Should probably go ahead and make this component, but I'll wait a little longer. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to put like a cutout through this in the shape of a square so that it can't turn, and that cutout will house a bearing, and then obviously this will have a little part sticking out that will go into the bore of that bearing. So the first thing I want to do is find a properly sized bearing, probably on Amazon. So I'm going to need something, so the entire thing is 8 millimeters. The bigger it is, the less likely it is going to be to fracture, right? I'm going to try to find something with a 5 millimeter bore. Alright, so I think I'm going to go with these. Most of the options that I saw had a 16 millimeter outer diameter. I think that's a little bit excessive for what we need, so we're going to stick with this. because it's only 1 centimeter outward diameter. So I'm going to add this to our BOM. Go ahead and put together some CAD of that square component that's going to notch into this aluminum, and hopefully you guys will see what I'm talking about as it comes together. So I'm going to go ahead and make this circle where this bearing is going to sit 5 millimeters, and it's going to be a press fit, so it'll be in there pretty snug. Or sorry, 10 millimeters for the outer diameter. And because I am a little worried about this nub, especially if it's being printed from or FDM printed, I'm going to add a little bit of a fillet to the edge of this shaft right here. We'll do 1 millimeter, as I think 2 millimeters would interfere with that bearing. Alright, so this is what we have so far. And I am just going to, in order to secure this, I'm just going to epoxy that edge onto this aluminum right here, rather than adding any more fasteners. So yeah, and then we just mirror that to the other side, and the drive system is pretty much done. Alright, yeah, and there you go. And then for these wheels to attach them, I'm just going to add some sort of long M5. I'm not exactly sure the length, but it's just going to go through here, all the way through these wheels. I can't remember the exact, I might do an M4 so there's more clearance, but so those wheels will be allowed to rotate around that screw, or that bolt, which will serve as an axle. So I'm not going to show that in this video. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but that's how I am going to go about that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I really appreciate you guys watching if you made it this far, and maybe let me know down below what you guys would like to see next. Thanks.